Hey guys, today we're going to look at the multiple choice section of the AP History test. So basically how it works is it's 55 questions and you have 55 minutes. So that breaks down to about 1 minute per question, and it is worth 40% of the exam. It is the highest valued part of the AP exam, being worth 40%. You only get 1 minute per question. This is actually not easy. These are stimulus-based questions. In fact, I was talking to some graders and they were saying you're not expected to get 100%. They're not even expected to get 90% on these questions. So you just have to do the best that you can do. This is where the writing portion of the test is crucial. You need to make up what you miss here in your writing. But there are a few strategies that we can look at, and we're going to look at those today. One of the things with these questions is they test your ability to think and reason historically. So you're looking for that historical thinking skill. What are they actually asking for? And it is stimulus based, meaning there's usually going to be a paragraph, maybe there's going to be a picture, a quote or something, and then you'll have 2 to 3 questions based off of that particular paragraph. So let's look at the strategies. One, they're out of 4, but there's going to be 2 obviously wrong answers. And this is where your dates and geography matter, because a lot of times what they're going to do is they're going to throw in a question, and then one of the answers looks like it could fit, but it's something that happened either in a completely different time frame or in a completely different part of the world. So understanding dates and geography, this is really going to come into help. There's also 2 possible correct answers, right? So we have 2 different choices that could be right, and we're going to look at how do we decipher between those in a little bit. So, how to succeed, right? When you first start, situate the question in time and place before reading, right? Dates and geography. So you're going to look at the stimulus, you're going to say, okay, when was this written? What are the time frame that they're talking about? Where is this actually taking place? So you have an idea of like, oh, this is what they're actually asking about. Read and consider all source info first, right? Look over that source info down at the bottom to say, oh, this is where it's coming from, this is who wrote it. And then eliminate distractors you know to be incorrect, and then guess if necessary, right? There's no penalty for guessing wrong. Now there is an exception. Sometimes if you just know your content knowledge well, you can just answer the question. Now where you would want to avoid this is if it says, based off of the quote above, what is the best answer, right? Like you need to make sure that you're looking at that quote. Sometimes it's just like, what year did Columbus sail the ocean blue? And so if you know like 1492, which obviously there's not gonna be a question like that, but basically that's the gist. So the one thing that you can do to really help yourself is practice, practice, practice. Seriously though, practice is key. So there's personal progress checks, there's Khan Academy, there's a number of different sources, and I can give you guys some also practice questions, but there's a number of different sources out there to help you practice these stimulus-based multiple choice questions. And so make sure you are actually just trying them. Just last night, me and Mr. Vogel were going through some of them just for fun, and they are not easy. They are challenging, so make sure that you guys are practicing. All right, so let's look at one real quick, okay? All right. First, situate the question in time and place before you read, all right? So we're looking at a historian in the Atlantic and World in 2012. So we know all right, this isn't the time and place, right? This is a news article. So let's look up here at what we've got. So just at a glance, we have Valley of Mexico, Mississippi River, 1492, Columbus, Aztecs, Mayans, okay, Mississippian. So what we know we're talking about right here is early Americas, right? Either pre-1492 or around that first entrance. Mississippi, which tells us Mississippi River, which tells us, okay, we've got North America. The fact that we have Aztecs and stuff, we also know we have Central America that we're looking at here. So that's our region. Time frame we know is pre-Europeanization of the Americas. All right, read the source and consider all source info first. So on the western side of the ocean, movements of people and ideas preceded the Atlantic connection. Great empires in the Valley of Mexico on the Mississippi River had collapsed or declined in the centuries before 1492. So we're looking at empires that are actually collapsing before Europe actually showed up. We know Europe comes in, and we know they caused lots of empires to collapse, lots of culture groups to crumble, but right here we're talking about what happened before Europe. As Columbus embarked on his first transatlantic voyage, the Mexica, or Aztecs, were consolidating their position in Mexico. Their city was a center of both trade and military might. Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital, held 200,000 people, a population greater than in the largest city in the contemporary Europe. All right, again, so as Columbus embarked, meaning he has not arrived there yet, pre-European interaction, the Mississippian culture spread east and west from its center. The city of Cahokia, I hope I'm saying that right, on the Mississippi River near the site of modern St. Louis. I used to live there, fun fact. It was a successor to earlier cultures, evidence of which can be seen in the great ceremonial mounds they built. Cahokia declined and was ultimately abandoned completely in the later 13th century, so late 1200s. It was abandoned. Throughout the southeast, smaller mound building centers continued. All right, so we know we have the stimulus, right? Now let's look at the question. Which of the following contributed most significantly to the population trend in pre-Columbian Mexico described in the excerpt? All right, what we can cross out is the fact that we could have just read the question and answer, right? This isn't the exception because it's actually asking for a description in the excerpt. And it's asking about pre-Columbian Mexico, right? And so we want to look at all right, we got kind of three different paragraphs here. Which one is focusing on pre-Columbian Mexico? It's this middle paragraph, all right? As Columbus embarked in the transatlantic voyage, the Mexica or Aztecs were consolidating their position in Mexico. Their city center was of both trade and military might. Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital, held 200,000 people, a population greater than the largest city in contemporary Europe. So we have which one contributed most significantly? Migration and pursuit of fertile lands. Trade and settlement resulting from maize cultivation. Low birth rates and high death tolls as a result of European diseases. Internal conflict between groups causing political instability. All right, take a second, pause if you need to, and come up with the answer that you think it is. All right, let's look at it. So let's first break it down as what are our eliminate our distractors. Okay, we read the source, considered all source info. Now let's eliminate our distractors. One, low birth rates and high death tolls as a result of European disease. All right, so this is where the time frame, knowing times and dates, actually helps, because we know pre-Columbus, pre-1492, European diseases haven't entered into the Americas. So we can cross out C right away. C right away. Then our next one, an internal conflict between groups causing political instability. So if we look back at this, right, what contributed to the significant population trend? What is the population trend we're looking at? We're consolidating their position. A population greater than the largest city in Europe held 200,000 people. That is an increase of population, right? So we know if the population trend is actually increasing, then internal conflict between groups causing political instability isn't going to be the case, right? Like, your population doesn't increase when you have instability and political instability and conflict, right? Like, that would tend to actually decrease your population. So it takes D and C out of it. And so that brings us down to A and B. Now, A here is the tricky one. Migration in pursuit of fertile lands. That would be one that I would think would be like, oh, they're trying to trick you with that one. Essentially, the reason it's a tricky one is because when we look at this, we see words like consolidation of their position, a city center, the capital, right? All of those words kind of lead us to understand that, like, oh wait, they're not really migrating. They're kind of past that migration stage, right? They have already settled. So instead of migration in pursuit of fertile lands, they're really actually settled, which leads us to only one option: trade and settlement resulting from maize cultivation. Now, the reason why it could be tricky to get that is is the fact that they don't have maize even mentioned in here, right? But that is where your understanding of the content is going to come to play, right? You need to understand what is going on in that time, place, and history. Now, maize cultivation is actually something that would cause a group of people to settle, right? Once you've got agriculture, you don't want to start migrating and leaving your farms behind, right? And so seeing that connection is going to be crucial. All right, let's look at one more. So, same prompt. Here's the question. Which of the following best characterizes the Mississippian societies described in the excerpt? All right, so that right there is automatically, we know this is the third part of it. That's what's talking about the Mississippian societies, okay? So, A, they had mixed agriculture and hunter-gatherer economies that favored the development of permanent villages. B, they were nomadic people who utilized river systems to move throughout the region. Or C, they lived in isolated, impermanent communities and left very little traces of their presence once a settlement had been abandoned. Or D, they used advanced agricultural practices like irrigation to support economic growth. All right. So, which of the following best characterizes the Mississippian societies? All right, so we've read the source, considered the information, we've situated time and place. Let's eliminate the distractors. All right, distractor number 1, B. They were nomadic people who utilized river systems to move throughout the region. Right away, this is talking about the city of Cahokia. They have a city, right? By having a city, you are not nomadic, right? So right off the bat, we know B isn't the case, right? All right, the next distractor we're going to say is C. They lived in isolated and permanent communities and left very little trace of their presence once the settlement had been abandoned. They left gigantic mounds, right? So that would not be little trace of their evidence, of their presence. Like we know that, again, they have a city that was, that can't be necessarily impermanent, so it can't be impermanent, and they have mounds, so they left traces, all right? So C is the other one's kind of easy. So this is where it's down to A and D, all right? Now, the tricky one here is D. There's no mention of advanced agriculture, but there is mention of permanent villages in option A, right? So if we look at D, they used advanced agriculture practices like irrigation to support economic growth. That might be the case, like maybe they did that. But if we actually look up here, and we have to come back to the question, right? Best characterizes the Mississippian societies described in the excerpt, right? So described in here. And that's key that you notice, you catch that part, that you gotta find what's described in there. They had a mixed agriculture and hunter-gatherer economies that favored development of permanent villages. They mention, let's see, Mississippi culture space, let's see. They mention the fact that permanent villages, and they've mentioned things that are actually found in this excerpt where they don't mention any advanced agricultural practices like irrigation in this excerpt. And that's why we know that it is A. All right, folks, I hope that this has helped you, that you've got a chance to actually get through it. If you have more questions, feel free to contact me directly, and make sure you practice.